Bonjour, good afternoon, and welcome to WASA Distance Education. My name is Greg Weaver, and this is ENG3C, Grade 11 College Prep English. I'd like to welcome everyone listening across the north this afternoon at home, your learning center, or on Bell Express View. To call in and join our class, you can call 1-800-465-7144 or 737-4017 or 2983 in the Sioux Lookout, Lac Seul, or Dryden area. Let's welcome everyone back to class today. This is our last class before the Easter weekend. A reminder that the WASA building will be closed tomorrow for the holiday. As well, it will also be closed on Monday for Easter Monday. So we have no class on Monday. We have class on Tuesday and Wednesday as normal. And class will probably be canceled on Thursday. I just need to confirm that. But class will probably cancel on Thursday as well. I will be traveling up to Pekanjicum on a community visit with some other teachers and staff. But I will confirm that on Tuesday. So if class is canceled on Thursday, Wednesday will be our last class. And that will be fine because we will probably get everything done before that time. So with that in mind, we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. And yesterday we were looking at the end of lesson 17. And we looked at creating an poetry anthology. Now, what you had to do with this poetry anthology is write 4 poems. Now, when you looked at writing these poems, what you had to do was you had to write one of each of the 3 types we looked at yesterday. Now, if you can't remember, we looked at ballads yesterday. So looking at standard lyrical ballad. We looked at cinquains, which is a spin-off of a Japanese form called the haiku, which we also looked at. So you have to have 1 haiku, 1 cinquain, and 1 ballad. Now your 4th type of poem can either be another one of the cinquain, ballad, or haiku, or if there's another type of poetry that you know about and you want to do, you can feel free to choose that one. Just make sure that and just run by me first so I know what you are doing, so I know that what to expect. As well, you have to have a title page for your poetry anthology. And your title page should have your name, some title. Don't just call it so-and-so's poetry anthology. Come up with some unique name, maybe along goes with the themes of the poems you're writing. Because you are writing, you try to come up with one general theme or idea. And the course code and the date. Now, ideally, I would like this to be in color. However, if you just want to do it in just regular pencil, that's fine. This can be done on a computer. You can find photos online or from Microsoft Word for clip art to include. That is completely fine. But as long as I kind of know what the overall title and the theme is, the easiest way is probably to do it on a computer. That way you can type everything up, do your title page, your 4 poems, and then you have to also write a bibliography. So what that is a little, probably paragraph, maybe 2, looking at who you are. Because you're writing these poems, you need a little biography. So your name, 2 biographical details about you, something that people would find interesting. So besides, so you have to have like your name, where you don't have to have when you're born, but where you were born. Couple more just details just built around you, as well as a brief explanation of your experience with poetry. You've written a lot of poetry. Is the first stuff you've written. What was your? Why did you choose to write about what you did? Please don't say you wrote it because you had to do it for a school assignment. That's not the best thing to say. So things like that. Now, each one of these components, the title page, the poems themselves, and the author biography, should have their own page. Now, depending on how you set up your poems, you may want to put each poem its own separate page, or maybe combine them all into 1 or 2 pages. That choice is up to you, but you'll have a minimum of 3 pages for your anthology. And you may have as many as 6, depending on if you do a poem on each page, or if you combine them together. Either way, that choice is up to you with what you do. And that is this big key question. This is a fairly big key question. I expect that it'll probably take you 1.5 to 2 hours to do. It's not something that you can just do in half an hour. It will take some time. But try your best. If you get stuck, I will be available over the Easter weekend by email or text or Facebook. Now, I will be traveling out of Sioux Lookout on Saturday and Sunday. I will have my phone on me, so you can still text or email me or Facebook me. And I'll be in town tomorrow and on Monday. So if you need to get home, you most certainly can. So that is key question 21. That's what we finished off looking at. We looked at lesson 17. So we're going to jump right into lesson 18 now. And we're going to look at more poetry and other types of poetry. But what we're looking at for this one is we're going to be looking at 2 more forms. One that's very structured and very set. The other one is very free-flowing. You can choose what you want. And you're going to also be writing examples of these types of poetry as well. So you're writing more poetry for the key question in lesson 18. So the first thing we're looking at is shape, or it's also known as concrete poetry. Now, this is a form that combines the linguistic, or the words that you have, as well as the visual, or the way that they are organized. Part of the meaning of the poem comes from the shape that the letters and the words take. There are a few different formats which are laid out below. Regardless of how the poem is set up, one thing remains the same. These poems are meant to be both seen and read. You can't just read them out loud. You need to be able to see them and understand what they are and what goes on with them. So our first one we have is shape poetry. So our first example is called Easter Wings It's by a poet named George Herbert. So, it says, Lord, who createdst man in wealth and store, though foolishly he lost the same, decaying more and more till he became most poor. With thee, O let me rise as larks harmoniously sing the day thy victories, and they shall fall further in the flight in me. My tender age and sorrow did begin, and did still with sickness and shame, though didst so punish sin, and I became most thin. With thee let me combine and feel this day thy victory, for if I imp my wings on thine, affliction shall advance the flight in me. So, that's one example of shape poetry. Now, the poem itself isn't bad, but one thing that you notice is the shape of this. So you notice the shape in general, it goes in and then out. And same with this one, it goes in and then out. The shape like that makes it looks like angel's wings. And the poem is called Easter Wings. So those look like wings themselves. When you picture angels with wings, that's only what they look like. So that is one example of shape poetry or concrete poetry. Another example we have, which you can find that example right below here. Now this one is in color. In your book it won't be in color, but this one is a symbol of a haiku that has just an image or so attached to it. So this is a haiku. It says, December night, barren fields fill with moon glow. So it's about the December nights, and what you see, you have a picture of the moon at the very top there. Underneath, you have more of a half moon underneath, where it looks like trees or shrubs. So the image itself that the poem is printed on is a barren field with the moon shining on it. So the content of that poem is reflected in the background image of that poem. There's one below it too. The one below it there is not it's not a haiku, it's just a regular poem, but the poet has simply done the outline of the shape with the words. And then the poets use just lines to fill it in. So the words themselves are press on, salmon, shimmer in the sun, strike up streams, settle your seed, shroud trolls, and surge over falls. And so it's obviously a poem about salmon going upstream to spawn. But if we just wrote that in a paragraph, it wouldn't be anything. It'd just be another poem. Because he organizes it in the shape of a fish itself, it's clear exactly what the context or the theme or the topic of the poem is. Now, it's important to keep in mind that shape poetry can take a variety of forms. As long as you're incorporating both visual and verbal or written elements in your poem, you are creating shape poetry. And I'd like to show a few more examples of that. And we're going to just fire up our search engine here, and we'll see what pops up. So shape poetry. I'm going to search for images here. So we have this one. This one is the shape of a plane. So it says, a click, a sputter, a whoosh to roar, a flick, a shudder, a push to soar. So I'm going one. So from the right, or from the left, going left up to here, back down under here, then this way. So a click, a sputter, a whoosh to roar, a flick, a shudder, a push to soar. The nose goes high, the wings steady. The plane is ready to touch the sky. That's one example. Another example of shape poetry. This one here, also fairly widespread, is want to be a fish? Have a slick fish head. Spread fish jam and fish bread. All's good around my bowl today. Don't like it, I'll swim away. Bubbles for my friends, swim loots from end to end. Shiny treasure chest, a castle on my own. Plastic kelp, fully grown. For our fish, I be the best. Not copper, not bronze, not silver. I be a goldfish. So you can see, this is actually a rhyming poetry. A rhyming poem organized in the shape of a fish. So have a slick fish head, spread fish jam on my fish bread. So head and bread rhyme right there. I'll screw around my bowl today. Don't like I'll swim away. So today and away would be another stanza that goes, or lines that go together. Bubbles for my friends, some loose from end to end. Shiny treasure chest, castle of my own, plastic cup fully grown. If I was a fish, I'd be the best. Not copper, not bronze, not silver, but a goldfish. This one is the shape of a crescent moon. And this one is about the Muslim holiday Ramadan. It says, do you see it far up high, a sign of mercy in the sky? A thread of silver shining bright, and all below with joy delight. They whisper prayers, intentions made, so in resolve they do not fade. Tomorrow marks their sacred fast. Yes, Ramadan is here at last. So that's another example. It always starts with towards the end of the moon, end of the moon phase. So this is why this is shaped this way. So those are some examples. We'll look at a few more, but all you have to do is just Google shape poem, or concrete poem or poetry, and you'll see thousands of examples. This is the last one we'll look at. This is the kite. So we start up here in the top left corner and working our way down. So it's like, I fly so high in the sky. Partly died I soar and glide. The wind is my guide as I flutter and slide. I entertain and thrall when I face a squall. Although I'm small, I'm invisible to all. Ecstatically, everybody can see me. I scan the beautiful skyline. I dance in warm sunshine. Yet freedom can never be mine, for I'm restricted by a mere twine. So this one, the poet both wrote the poem first to make it all rhyme, and then organized it in a way so that not only did but take on the shape of the poem, but even the line length makes it so you can actually write it in the shape of a kite itself. We have the red at the edge, green, and then another red diamond in the middle with the words. So that's our first example of a shape poem. We're going to jump back into our lesson here. And we're going to look at our second one now, which looks at a found poem. Now, this poetry form seems like it'd be really easy, but at the same time, still has a fair amount of challenge to it. So, a found poem and found poetry is written exactly as it sounds, from found materials. So this poem is created from another piece of writing. The content of the poem is taken from other sources, then rearranged into something meaningful for the poet themselves. Found poetry is perhaps the best example of poetry whose meaning comes from the reader. What that means is that a lot with found poem is it's when you read it and figure out what it is what you make it. So it becomes how you read it and what becomes what it is. So what we are going to do is we're going to read a couple examples, and then we'll do what we just did as well. We'll look online to see what we can find for examples. So first here we have an example there, but we said keep it more stable. So found poetry is an example of poetry when it comes to the reader. It's a movement called reader response that argues that there's no meaning in the text except that what comes from the reader. Because found poetry is literally taken randomly from other sources, the poet cannot be investing too much meaning into the words. They take it wherever they find. The reader is required to make what he or she will from the arrangement of words, and that's how the poet is chosen. One of the fun things about found poetry is how it uses language. The poet can take even the most unpoetic text, such as a math textbook, and by picking out some phrases, can turn them into poetry. Some found poems copy it word for word. Others will pick and choose certain words from a larger selection or a larger bit to make it work. So, the example we have here there is an example from speeches by a guy named Donald Rumsfeld. And what that is, he was a former U.S. Secretary of Defense who was one of the main architects, the guy who spearheaded the U.S. invasion of Iraq back in 2004, 2005. And so this is just excerpts from his speeches. That are just taken out and turned into this. So it's called The Unknown. So as we know, there are no unknowns. There are things that we know we know. We also know that there are known unknowns. That's to say, we know there are some things that we do not know. but there's also unknown unknowns. The ones that we don't know that we don't know. So that's one example of that. There's a lot more out there. It's become some of a thing for people to take speeches or song lyrics as well and kind of turn them around and turn it into found poetry. So I'm going to take the example there where it says, more recently, you look at Sarah Palin's text poetry. So these are just some examples of found poems taken from her speeches. So what we have here, it's not me being a dictator. It's the last words are spoken. And me not being a dictator won't be telling anyone what to do. A governor, especially one that's not going to be a dictator and all this, doesn't have control over that. Well, it's not about Sarah. So that's her. Sorry about that. If we Google, we do it more broad. Just go found. Found poetry. We'll see a lot more that comes out. So the first one here is an example, and this came from a pretty dry essay on mechanics. So hence no fourth, however great, can stretch a chord, however fine, to a horizontal line, which is accurately straight. What does that mean? The choice is up to the reader how they interpret, read, and understand that. Another example down here is another guy. This example here is from a baseball announcer who they compiled all of his what he said together and made it look into a poetry form. So it says the Yankees had a traumatic 4 days, actually 5. The terrible crash of Thurman Munson going through all the agony. Then today, you and I, along with the rest of the team, flew to Canton for the services. And the family, very upset. You know what might sound a little corny, but we had the most beautiful fall moon tonight. And the crowd enjoying whatever was going on right now, it says it may sound corny. But it's like some kind of a luck and omen. Both the moon and Thurman Munson both sang into heaven. I can't get it on my mind. I just saw the full moon. I saw it running Thurman Munson. And that's it. There's a whole website dedicated to this. This is found poetry. And there's examples in this. And this is actually ones that you could even turn into buying. So there's all examples of found poetry. So jump back into our lesson here. And we have some support questions on page 20. Now this lesson's pretty short. So we'll get to this in key question 22. And if we have any time to we may get a little start going with lesson 19, because that's a bit more challenging. So the key question says, for each of the poems you read in the unit, answer the following questions. Your answers should be complete sentences and should be recorded in your notebook. You have to answer these 3 questions for each of the 3 poems that we read. And those poems are the ones that we look at in students, making sure what answers they suggest in the back of the course. And that's for Shadow. That's for Angel's Wings. And that's all for the 3 shape poems. Is what those refer back to. So, how does this poem follow the convention of its form? How does the poem differ from its traditional format? How is this poem differ from the traditional and why is this chosen form particularly appropriate for the content of that poem? So try that on your own, and we're going to click into key question 22 and jump right to lesson 19 before the end of the class. So question 22 asks you to look at shape and found poems. So you now have the opportunity to write more of your own poetry. Create both a shape poem and a found poem about the same topic. Your poem should be about a current event. To find the phrases for the found poem, choose to submit a newspaper article on a current event. You should submit the article with your poem. The number of phrases you choose is up to you, but try to think too hard about the phrases as you select them. The poem will work better if you're a random selection covering your arrangement. So first thing you start doing a poem on the exact same topic, both a found poem and a shape poem. So for the found poem, look for newspaper articles, websites that have information about that topic, and just try to arrange it in a certain way. Don't worry about trying to find the right words. Choose a chunk, narrow it down, and then write that part. For your shape poem, has been the exact same event, but organize it maybe in the theme of what's going on or the event that it's describing. When you've written both poems, so you do both poems first, and then write a one paragraph just response or explanation that addresses the following. Which form suited your current event better? Which was easier? Was it the shape poem or the found poem? Which poem did you find easier to write and why? And of those two, which format do you think best conveys your theme and why? So this question is worth 20 marks. Within those 20 marks, 10 marks come from actually writing your poems, 5 marks for the shape poem, 5 marks for the found poem, and then 10 marks come for how well do you explain them from this paragraph. Now, with this paragraph, there is no right or wrong answers. It's just what do you think and how well can you explain what that is. And there is a rubric looking at how it will be marked. And you can see that is on page 21. You can see that. And then that's the whole lesson. This lesson's really short. We're going to jump right into lesson 19 because that one will take us a bit longer to do. The first three the first lesson we looked at, lesson 16, looked at just some basic terms. This lesson and the one before that, lesson 17, looked at different types of poems. What we're going to look at next is a bit harder. This is what's known as thematic analysis, or trying to figure out what does the poet mean when he writes this. What do the words on the page actually mean what he says? So we're looking at the meaning of the poems and the poetry itself. So when I was thinking about this, just think about how does it make you feel? First reading the poem, then once you actually know what it means in the explanation, how does that explanation make you feel as well? How does it change how you read or understand that poem? So the first one we're going to read is a poem by a poet named Wilfred Owen. And that's on page 23 and 24. Now, this poem was written in World War One, and we'll be looking at this for a fair amount at least for today's class and Monday or Tuesdays. Is a lot of poetry written during World War One is very grim. It's very depressing because so many, mostly men, were being killed during the war. And Wilfred Owen was one of them. He was a soldier. He fought. And I can't remember if he made it through or if he died in the war. So we'll check right now. No, so he died during the war. So he didn't live. He wrote about the war and didn't live to see the end. So the poem is on page 23 and 24. We'll read it through. And then we'll explain kind of what's going on with it. There is some Latin in this at the very beginning, as well as at the very end of the poem is another language that's known as Latin. So it's in English, it's dulce decorum est, and we'll look at what it means after we read it. So bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through the sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched to sleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on, bloodshot. All went lame, all blind, drunk with fatigue, deaf to even the hoots of disappointed shells that dropped behind. Gas! Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets just in time. But someone was still yelling out and stumbling, and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim, through the misty panes and thick green light, as in under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunged at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes withering of his face, his hanging face, like a devil sick of sin. If you hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud, of vile and curable sores with innocent tongues, my friend, you would not tell with such high zest to chode of ardent glory for some desperate glory, the old lie. Dulce decorum est pro patri mori. What that phrase means, the first word, dulce decorum est, is it is better, or so sweet and good it is, pro patri mori, to die for one's country. So with that in mind, the poem's title translated in English is Sweet and Good It Is. Final lines are to die for one's country. So with that in mind, we have a poetic analysis right here to read through. We'll read through that, and I'll try to explain a bit more about what it means and what's going on. And then what I'd like to do, because that time will almost be out of time, is spend a little bit of time and just look at a bit more about that poet and what happened before we jump into the next part. So it says, the title of the poem was the first half of the Latin phrase. It means good and sweet it is. And the final two lines connect the poem to the title by finishing the phrase, the second half, to die for one's country. The author, Wilfred Owen, was a World War I veteran with a decidedly negative outlook on war. If the topic of the poem is war, and that's what it is, the topic's war, the theme, it is most certain that war is not the glorious sacrifice that people made it out to be. Owen uses figurative devices to convey his message. Firstly, he uses imagery to create the reader a sense of the horrors that men are facing. He writes, the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, and the phrase, many of us had lost their boots, but limped on bloodshot. Simile and metaphors are both used to great effect as well. He compares the soldiers to beggars or hags who are bent over from years of wear. Of course, one must remember that these are young men. The average age was probably 21, 22 years old. The oldest that he was seen that volunteer was probably around 25 at the oldest. But compared to they're old, that they're benched over like they're really old. Moreover, he compares their behavior to intoxication because they're so tired that they're drunk with fatigue. Fatigue is another word for just being tired or exhausted. Owen also makes comparison between the blood that the men are coughing up and cancer or cud. Both cancer and cud are familiarly unpleasant items. Perhaps the greatest thing he uses, however, is allusion. Allusion is a reference to the well-known concept outside the poem. Allusions allow poets to invoke memories in the reader with few words. Now, Owen uses these pro-war expressions against the people who would use it by pointing out how absurd the notion is. He directs the attacks to the practice of telling children with such high zest about the glories of war. So his poem is written as a free verse, so it doesn't rhyme, which allows the freedom of making it a narrative. It tells a pretty good story. By briefly describing a gas sack in the lines, gas, boys, quick! Owen puts the reader at the scene. Overall, it's a powerful poem with a clear pacifistic or peace message. And some of the more of the background with this, just before we wrap up, is a lot of, in World War I, it was glorious to go off and fight the war. And if you died, you died gloriously for your country. Make it seem like it's peaceful and it happens, it's peaceful, it's relaxing, it's nothing horrible. To contrast that, the illusion is talking about the gas tank, and the gas described here will be chlorine gas, which makes your lungs generate excess fluid, so you literally drown because you can't breathe. That's the gas he described in the gas attack, was chlorine gas, because it has a yellowish green tinge. So that description is kind of at odds with what the poems, what's being told to people, and especially to men, to get them to join the war or to be recruited. So we will leave it at that. When we come into class on Tuesday, there's no class Monday, and WAS is closed tomorrow. We will pick up looking at the rest of Lesson 19, and I expect I'll probably take us most of the class. We'll then have we have a chance we'll start Lesson 20. If not, we'll do that on Wednesday. We'll finish Lesson 20 and do a bit of a wrap-up, and that'll be it. I think class will be canceled on Thursday, but I will let you know on Tuesday for sure. Other than that, hope everyone has a good long weekend. I'll talk to everyone again on Tuesday. Any questions? I will be around all weekend if you need help with anything.